Welcome to The Writer's Dream. Our show is one where authors could talk about how they write their books, why they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. You can find us on YouTube. Just search my name, Linda Maria Frank. I'm the author of Annie Tillery Mysteries, or The Writer's Dream. We also have about 125 interviews, and if you're interested in how to write, publish, or market, there's some very good tips in those interviews. And also, if you like good books, you can find some very good books there. We're also on Facebook. The Facebook page is The Writer's Dream. If you have a question for me or you'd like to be on the show, you can contact me through that Facebook page. Today's guest today is Elizabeth Zelvin, and Elizabeth Zelvin is the author of the Mendoza Family Saga, the Bruce Kohler Mysteries. She's a poet, she's a singer-songwriter, and she's an outrageous older woman, which I think is really great. And she's here today to talk about her writing, but she's, in particular, her newest book, Where Crime Never Sleeps. So take it away, Liz. Tell us about this book.
Where Crime Never Sleeps is the fourth volume of Murder New York Style, which is a series of crime fiction anthologies written by members of the New York chapter of Sisters in Crime, which is a national organization that was started in 1986 to promote the interests and profession of women crime writers who were not being paid, reviewed, or treated the same as male crime writers. And today things have gotten a lot better, but they are still not as equal as we would like them to be.
That's so true everywhere, isn't it?
It is. And they have done fantastic work. It was started by a number of crime fiction writers that mystery lovers have heard of. Sarah Paretsky was the godmother of them all. And I actually have had stories from the Bruce Kohler Mystery Series in all 4 volumes of Murder New York Style. And Where Crime Never Sleeps is the first that I've edited. And of course, since it's a feminist organization, it's a level organization, which means I don't get paid, the authors don't get paid. It's being published by a wonderful publisher, Level Best Books, and it's a terrific anthology, partly because I'm a crackerjack editor.
There you go.
And I must say that I have learned a great deal in editing these stories, and this will be the 6th Bruce Kohler short story.
Okay.
It's called, and they're all New York themed and really express the New Yorkishness and individualism of New Yorkers. Mine is Death Will Finish Your Marathon, and it's set against the New York Marathon.
If you and I ran the marathon, it would.
And in fact, the first one, Death Will Clean Your Closet, was my first published short story, and it came out before my first novel, a year before my first novel, which was Death Will Get You Sober. My protagonist, Bruce Kohler, is a recovering alcoholic with a smart mouth, very New York, and a big heart. And we have watched him evolving as a human being, and he has a couple of sidekicks. His friend Barbara, who is a world-class codependent who can't resist helping and minding other people's business, which makes her a lot of fun and a wonderful amateur sleuth, although she has to keep going back to Al-Anon because she keeps backsliding into codependency and not keeping the focus on herself. So I've had a wonderful time with that series, which is now 4 novels, a novella, and the 7th short story actually will appear in Ellery Queen's mystery magazine in the fall, and that one is Death Will Help You Imagine, and the body is found on the Imagine sign in Strawberry Fields in Central Park.
Oh, yes.
So these are New York mysteries, except for, well, this is, it's an offshoot of New York City, the Hamptons.
That's for sure.
Death Will Extend Your Vacation.
All summer long, anyway.
Yes,
right?
and I took the picture of the bloody hand in the dunes on Atlantic Beach in Amagansett by my side. I had so much fun taking their picture. People were
I bet
fascinated.
people were very curious about
Yes,
the
what
bloody
is
hand.
this bloody hand doing sticking out of the sand? Why is this woman with the camera walking around it?
So can you give us like a little insight into the plot of the marathon mystery?
Yes, you know, there always has to be a hook. And the hook in this one was, who would kill an old man who everybody loved? And the old man was based on a real person who I knew and loved in New York. There was a man they called the mayor of Central Park. And he was a Puerto Rican who was the first, he was supposed to have been the first runner who ran around the New York track, around the Central Park Reservoir.
The reservoir.
Yeah, yeah. And he sat at the South Gatehouse every single day, rain or shine, from 1935 until his death at the age of 94, which was a few years ago. And everybody adored him. And so I killed him off, which is, of course, what mystery writers do. And the puzzle was, if everybody loved him, in the book, I called him the ancient marathoner, because he used to tell stories. He would tell these endless stories. And of course, you ramp that up when you fictionalize something. You know, he was just the germ of it. And it's like the ancient mariner in the poem, who would, you know, he would come, and there would be the wedding guests. And in the Coleridge poem, he stoppeth one in three, you know, which meant he would tell the stories whether you wanted to hear them or not. And of course, the key to the murder is buried in those stories that he has been telling people all those years. But the stories are all very different. I mean, there are 17 stories.
Yeah, well, sure.
It's Where Crime Never Sleeps, Murder New York Style 4. Yeah. And they are not cozy stories. They are not sweet. There is not a suburban divorcee sleuth or a muffin shop or a quilting shop in there. I would say about at least.
I shouldn't make a face at those because they're very successful.
And I have friends who make a wonderful living writing wonderful
Yes, I do
books
too.
in that genre, which is the heirs of Agatha Christie. But I would say in about a third of the stories, the protagonist is a killer. And, you know, they just came spontaneously out of the writers. They had to write something on a New York theme. And in fact, we originally thought that maybe we would use attractions or monuments or events that draw people to the city, or that people go to see, whether they're locals or out-of-towners. And, you know, what people came up with were what the contributors came up with.
Remember the show? There are 8 million stories in the Naked City.
Well,
I used to I was a volunteer gardener in Central Park for about 10 years. And I have a group of stories that I could tell and I was just digging in the dirt. You know, when people would come by and talk to me, or I would observe things, or I would get these stories from my gardener who I worked for. And New York is, it's a treasure trove of different stories. There's so many people there, so many different kinds of people. I love New York.
Well, I write more and more about Central Park, because when I'm in the city, I used to run, but people would say, "Oh, you're walking." So now I walk with my walking poles. I use walking poles, and it's great. It gives me an upper body workout. Here I do it on Girard Drive, and the only drawback is that people say, "Where's the snow?" which is rather annoying. But I meet a lot of people, and what I've had, you see, when you're writing fiction, you can enhance everything. So Bruce runs. Actually, Barbara makes him run, and she makes him run in the marathon. And Bruce, who has a smart mouth, says, "Barbara's made me do some crazy things in my life, but running in the marathon is right up there." And he's complaining. He said it's the kind of thing that makes everybody laugh when you complain about it in an AA meeting. Because when I wrote the Bruce Cola mysteries, when I started Death Will Get You Sober, and I have my other hat, my other career is as a therapist and as a originally a social worker by
I was going to
training.
ask you why you made your hero a recovering alcoholic and this connection to Al-Anon, but of course then you told me that you were a therapist. So
Well,
there
I
you go.
worked in the alcoholism field for many years, running alcohol treatment programs. And the last few years, I was working down on the Bowery, which of course is not the Bowery anymore. It's completely gentrified. But when I was there, when I first went down there in the 80s, the remnants were there. I got to see the last flop houses, the last drunks, lying in the gutter, and then it started, the notorious old men's shelter. I mean, you really felt you'd feel like Wonder Woman just walking across the lobby with your clipboard in your hand. And the last few years I was working there, I was running around saying, I am going to write a murder mystery, because I always loved murder mysteries. And I'm going to call it Death Will Get You Sober. So one of the places that I start is with a title. And that was my title, but I didn't get to sit down and write the book until I left my last day job, because of course I didn't
you don't have any time.
You don't have the time.
Well, I have to ask you a question as a mystery writer. Most mystery writers end up writing a series. I can't think of too many mystery writers who don't write, more than one book. And why do you think, and I think the formula for success is, first of all, the plot, and it's the character. It's the combination of the troubled character and the plot that they get involved in. Why do you think that's so successful? First of all, do you agree?
Oh, well, there are market considerations and there are craft and storytelling considerations. The market, we all got used to the series that goes on and on. And when I went into writing fiction, after many years as a poet, and one of my poetry books is here, Gifts and Secrets, Poems of the Therapeutic Relationship, which is my second poetry book. When I decided to write mysteries, and I had some that did not get published that I wrote in the 70s, and when I came back to it, I didn't even realize how much mysteries had changed and how much the publishing business had changed. And that was before it really changed. I thought you could go on. And when, in fact, St. Martin's published Death Will Get You Sober, I was 64 years old. Finally, I'd wanted to be a writer since I was 7 years old, and I had published professional material, I had published poetry. I thought I was set. I had a good house, legendary editor. I thought I would write about Bruce for the rest of my life and there would be no problem. And of course, then everything changed. The Kindle came, Amazon devalued the price of books. Nobody wanted to pay more than $10. And, the publishing companies would dump you the second your numbers didn't go up.
Yes.
So everything changed. And the way people wrote changed. On the other hand, from the storytelling point of view, and we talked before the program started about how we want people to fall in love with our characters. We fall in love with our characters. I haven't talked yet about my historical novels, which are about the Sephardic diaspora.
And they came before the mysteries, didn't they?
No, they came afterward.
After the mysteries.
They came afterward. This is, I wrote a short story called The Green Cross about a young Jewish sailor who sails with Columbus on the first voyage of discovery on the same day that the Jews are kicked out of Spain in 1492. Now, I knew that fact. I also knew that some people think Columbus was Jewish. We won't go into it, and I don't have my notes, but I do not believe it. I have good reasons for not believing it. So this young man, I know I'm all over the place, but I am all over the place. This young sailor, Diego, came knocking on the inside of my head in the middle of the night saying, let me out, tell my story. I don't want to do it. I want to go back to sleep. Let me out. So I finally stumble out of bed, and I write some notes, and in the morning, there are the notes telling me to write this story. I don't want to do it. I have to do research.
Yeah, a lot of
I always
research.
hated research. I never wanted to do. Tell
More
my
fun
story.
to make things up.
No, so I write the story, And it was published in Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, which is a huge honor.
Oh, yeah.
So then I had more to say, so I told another one. And then I had more to say, and that's how the novel Voyage of Strangers, which is about the second voyage, and is what really happened when Columbus discovered America, which is a shocking story about the genocide of the Taino, and is also about the aftermath of the expulsion of the Jews. And in it, I discovered Diego's sister Rachel, who I'm writing about now. And then one thing led to another, and as I did more research, I learned a lot more about what happened to the Jews afterward, ended up writing the second novel, Journey of Strangers, where they end up in the Ottoman Empire, and which is how so many of the Jews ended up in Istanbul, because there was a war in Italy where they went first and they got kicked out of there. It's one thing led to, and now I love research. But this falling in love with the characters is so important. And now I don't start with a title. Either Bruce starts talking in my head, or Bruce and Barbara's partner, now husband Jimmy. They got married actually at the end of book 5, which is not a print book because I lost one publisher and then another publisher and then an ebook publisher. But there is an ebook, Death Will Pay Your Debts, where Bruce and Jimmy end up in Debtors Anonymous, and I had a lot of fun with that. But the thing is, my whole 30 years working with clients with addictions and codependency problems and compulsive behaviors, eating disorders, is empowering people to turn their lives around and helping them get clean and sober and free of compulsions and addictions and dysfunctional behavior. Well, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I have a fictional character. People say, oh, is Bruce gonna? I have so many mysteries with the drunk, the drunken cop, or the addicted police, the private eye. I said, Bruce is not going to relapse. Bruce is going to get better. He's going to have fun in AA. You may watch the program Mom, wonderful show. Well, when I started writing Bruce, in fiction, in TV, there was no fun in being sober. Matt Scudder, very dark. Lawrence Block, wonderful, brilliant mystery writer. James Lee Burke, Dave Robichaux, depressing. I said, I'm going to show there is fun in sobriety, there is laughter in AA. I'm going to make it fun. So and he's never going to relapse. When he is sober for a while, he's going to notice he has other problems. Death will help you leave him. Relationship problems, love addiction. Death will extend your vacation. Group houses in the Hamptons. Well, if you're not drinking and doing drugs, what are you doing? You're cooking up a storm. Barbara has to address her eating issues. Absolutely. And of course, they find a body on the beach in their group house, and they have to deal with that.
But this is real life.
It is real life.
So many people, I don't know anybody who doesn't have any problems.
No.
And the ones who don't have, the few that I do know that seem problemless are boring.
And I believe, because I am a therapist, and because I have seen how transformational recovery is, I do believe, there are people who believe people can't change, and there are people who believe people can change. Obviously, I believe people can change. I've seen it. I have seen people transformed. But you got to do the work. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
Relationships are work.
Yes.
And then it's really hard keeping characters who are amateurs in a place as big as New York City. If they are in a village, an Agatha Christie village, everybody knows everybody. We could talk about, mystery writers talk about Cabot Cove syndrome, where,
Yeah, makes sense.
where, every 2 minutes, Jessica Fletcher is falling across a body. It's a miracle there's anybody left in her little town in Maine.